Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. So, I've spent over 15 years working as a child-centered product design strategist, and today we are going to completely shift your mindset. We're moving way beyond basic usability and stepping into a much more mature, systems-level understanding of designing for kids. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a product designer, what we're covering today is absolutely going to change how you evaluate the tools, apps, and physical spaces that kids interact with every single day. Okay, let's quickly map out our syllabus for today. We'll kick things off by looking at the broken old model of design. Then we'll walk through the core concepts of what children actually need, explore some common hidden pitfalls, and finally wrap things up with a quick summary and some practice questions. By the time we wrap up this explainer, you're going to walk away with 4 measurable skills. You won't just be asking if a kid can figure out how to tap a button. Instead, you'll be able to explain the shift toward making products developmentally fit. You'll easily spot where products fail when different values collide. You'll know how to design really healthy boundaries, and you'll be able to critically evaluate the real-world trade-offs that impact the relationship between kids and adults. So, let's start right at the beginning. What does child-centered design actually mean? First things first, we have to completely shatter this old misconception that kids are just, chaotic, tiny adults with smaller hands. For the longest time, the old model of product design simply asked, can a child figure this out? But honestly, that completely misses the reality of the situation. Designing for the future means you are designing for a moving target. Kids have rapidly changing abilities, uneven judgment, and they exist under unequal power dynamics because adults are always acting on their behalf. So the future model asks a much better question. Is this developmentally and ethically fit? You have to balance safety, trust, learning, and autonomy all at the exact same time. It's kind of like designing a courtyard in one of Beijing's old neighborhoods. It doesn't just connect the rooms, it manages who enters, what stays visible, and what is kept protected. It's a whole living system.
Moving right along, let's break this down into what we call the 6 irreducible truths of what kids actually need.
Truth number 1. Children are not just one single audience. They are in many stages of becoming. You simply cannot assume there's one universal child profile. Think about learning to ride a bike, right? A balance bike, training wheels, and a geared bike all serve completely different levels of coordination. A digital product has to match the child's specific stage. And here's a fantastic memory tip for you. Friction is useful. A little bit of friction in a product actually teaches the child. If a product blocks an action completely, or if it has absolutely no friction and just hides all the risk, that's a mismatch. The problem there isn't the kid, it's the product. Truth number 2 is all about protection and having room to act. Honestly, this is the central tension of child-centered design. Think of a playground fence. It doesn't remove freedom, it defines a safe boundary where kids can test their limits without drifting out into real danger. The memory tip to lock in here is guardrails, not cages. If you optimize purely for safety, you prevent them from learning. But if you optimize purely for freedom, you expose them to manipulation or actual harm. You needed just enough restriction to keep them safe, but enough openness to keep them curious. Next up, truths 3 and 4. Concept 3 is that a product acts like a tutor. It is never neutral. It's always shaping a kid's habits, their patience, their self-control. And concept 4 reminds us that kids rely on adults. Think about a school lunch for a second. It has to satisfy the child's appetite, sure, but it also has to satisfy the parents' concern for safety and health, plus the school's budget constraints. A product operates in a shared ecosystem just like that. If a parent at home or a teacher at school can't set boundaries or even understand how the product works, then adoption and safety are both going to fail. Okay, truth 5. Trust is quite literally a design material. It has to be earned, and it cannot have hidden rules. Trust is that predictability that gives a kid the confidence to take action. It's a lot like knowing a reliable bridge is going to hold your weight the moment you step onto it. And truth 6, context matters. Think of a flashlight. A flashlight is always useful, but the actual need for it changes drastically depending on whether you're reading a book under a blanket or trying to signal someone across a dark field. For a child, whether they are playing alone, supervised by a parent, or learning in a group, that context changes the entire meaning of their autonomy. Now, when expert designers actually synthesize all 6 of these truths, they look directly at the failure modes. For instance, treating all 7-year-olds and 14-year-olds the exact same way, that is a massive failure to match developmental stages. Ignoring whether a kid is supervised or not is a failure of context. Using this matrix is exactly how you ensure your products are developmentally honest, rather than just technically polished and easy to use. All right, let's take these concepts out into the real world and talk about the four major design trade-offs. We are looking at four core levers here: safety versus autonomy, engagement versus well-being, visibility versus privacy, and simplicity versus developmental richness. Designing well is kind of like tuning a hanging mobile. Pull one lever, like let's say cranking up engagement, and you can quietly bend and damage another piece entirely, like the child's well-being. A huge modern trap is optimizing purely for engagement, where you're just exploiting their attention instead of rewarding real growth and learning. Let's ground this with a real-life example. Think about a school platform in Beijing used to manage homework and daily schedules. If a parent can see every single action their child takes in real time, well, that child is going to feel constantly evaluated, right? That completely crushes their autonomy. But on the flip side, if the teacher only sees the final end result, they're going to miss all those crucial early signs of confusion. Deciding exactly who sees what, that layer of visibility, is a massive trade-off that actively shapes the whole family dynamic. Privacy isn't just a simple yes-no binary. It's a deeply layered permission structure. Now, let's pivot a bit to look at the common mistakes that students, and frankly even seasoned pros, make all the time. Even the most well-intentioned teams fall into these hidden traps. If your goal is safety, but your solution is to overblock everything, you just end up creating fear and passivity. If your goal is well-being, but you optimize solely for engagement, you create compulsion. And adding tons of surveillance and parent dashboards to over-design around risk, that accidentally builds a really brittle, distrustful system. From the child's perspective, the system is literally telling them, you cannot be trusted. There's another massive mistake happening right now, and it revolves around personalization. It sounds great on paper, but there's a huge hidden risk. You always have to ask yourself, is the product adapting to help the child grow, or is it adapting just to keep the child compliant and easy to retain? Unless your goal is to raise a perfectly predictable robot, a system that constantly predicts exactly what a child wants is actually shrinking their world, instead of acting as a rich environment for growth. Okay, let's pull all of this together in a quick summary on building trusted systems. Here are your top 5 takeaways to lock in. First, move your mindset from making things usable to making things trusted. Second, remember that absolutely every boundary creates a behavior. It teaches the kid what's expected of them. Third, look really closely at what products quietly train a child to do, not just what's displayed on the screen. Fourth, always ask who is paying the cost of a design trade-off. And fifth, design for the relational effect between the child and the adults in their ecosystem. Going forward, you're not just looking at a list of features anymore. You're evaluating the hidden shape of products and asking what kind of childhood they are assuming. Before we wrap up, let's do a little knowledge check with some practice questions to test your new systems-level mindset. Let's start with an easy one. Why can't a child-centered product just assume one universal child profile? Think about it for a second. Well, remember the bicycle analogy. Kids are not one fixed audience. They are moving targets in many stages of becoming. A 6-year-old and a 14-year-old need entirely different levels of productive friction and coordination. Okay, stepping it up to a medium-level question. How can an overprotective system, when that's meant to keep a child entirely safe, actually end up being harmful? Think back to the guardrails versus cages concept. If a system is way too protective, it sends this hidden, internalized message that the child cannot be trusted at all. It takes away their room to learn through making small, safe mistakes, which completely prevents them from developing their own judgment. All right, here's a deeper conceptual question for you. How does adding a strict safety boundary actively teach a child a new behavior or an internal model of the world? Well, remember that every single boundary is a lesson. Kids don't just experience rules, they absorb the actual shape of the rules. A super strict boundary might reduce immediate harm, sure, but it also trains them to reduce their own initiative. They learn exactly what kind of action is possible in the world, strictly based on the boundaries we set for them. I want to leave you with this final thought, which is really the big aha moment of this entire explainer. Child-centered design is the art of making boundaries that protect without shrinking the child's becoming. The next time you evaluate an app, a new toy, or a digital platform, I want you to ask yourself not just if it works smoothly or if it's easy to use, ask yourself, does it truly deserve a child's trust? Thank you so much for learning with me today.